Florida State thinks it's a travesty they got left out of the college football playoff, Matt DeBerry. Travesty. They're going to meet Travesty in a few weeks, and they're going to beat you 38-7. Colin Cowherd, who has no problem saying stuff,
Yeah.
coming after the Noles hard.
Yeah, a travesty because there's no Jordan Travis, right? It's pretty good. But yeah,
Got it.
I don't know if it's going to be that type of blowout because I don't know how many Georgia Bulldogs are sitting out of this game. I'm assuming there's going to be some Florida State players sitting out of this game. So I don't know what these two teams are going to look like. We've seen Georgia play in the Sugar Bowl where they just decided not to show up for a quarter and a half, end up losing to Texas. So we'll see. I don't know if Georgia's going to beat this team by 30 points the way Mr. Cowherd or I'm blanking on the guy's name, whoever said that was Colin Cowherd or someone else.
It was.
Yeah, the quarterback situation, Ryan, down in Tallahassee is not a good one. I don't see whoever it is taking snaps, being able to do much against this Georgia defense. But we'll see if guys like Kendall Milton and Brock Bowers, like we've talked about in another video, if they all play. If they do, then you have to really like Georgia's chances.
Yeah, if Georgia has most of its players playing, I feel really good that they could win by 30. I might predict that. It's early. I got to let that bake for a little bit longer, but I think Georgia will win by a pretty big margin. But the other thing is, there are plenty of Florida State players that could choose to sit out as well that are huge impact guys. They're going to have guys go to the league. But, I mean, both of these teams were in the same position where they both felt like they got left out of the playoff. This is the consolation prize, really, is the Orange Bowl, and they're going to take it out on each other. I just imagine Georgia's going to be better at doing that. How many Georgia players would have to be missing for you to feel like they're not, Georgia's not going to be able to beat Florida State by a significant margin? It's not like they weren't missing guys against Alabama or missing guys all year long, and we thought they were the best team in the country. So even without Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey in some of those games, even without a Kendall Milton, we still viewed them as the best team in the country. Maybe if they don't have the full arsenal, it'll be really hard to just blow out Florida State. But I feel confident they're going to go down there and beat them no matter who's out there, to be honest.
Well, listen real quick. Let's go down the list here. You've got guys like Javon Bullard, Kamari Lassiter, Small Munden. All three of those guys, and there could be some defensive linemen too. There's a lot of veterans in that group, but those three in particular, I think, are really good defenders who have a chance to leave. How many of those three, Dean, do you think will stick around and play for that Orange Bowl? I mean, Kamari Lassiter is getting late first round, early second round grades. Javon Bullard's a playmaker. Teams are going to love him. Small Munden, already from a physical standpoint, looks like an NFL linebacker, former 5-star. I think he's maybe a second, maybe third round pick. At worst, if you're those three guys, I think you have to make a really tough decision.
Well, there's two things about that conversation. I do think that what happened last year with Anderson and Young coming back and playing for Alabama may have adjusted the skipping games thing, but we'll see. B, you mentioned that Smile would be, where did you say?
Probably mid to late second, early third. I'm not sure he's a first-round pick. Now, I know Ryan looks at a lot of mock drafts. I've seen Kamari Lassiter and Javon Bullard going a little higher than Small Munden. It all depends on the team and the needs and all that and how they do on these combines. But, even Tyke Smith, who I think doesn't have a year of eligibility left, he's a starter, has made a lot of plays. Is he a guy who said, you know what, I'll play one more college game or I'm going to sit out too? There's a lot of guys who I think are having that question mark and talking with their families about that, Ryan. So I don't know when they're going to make that decision. If you're Kirby, you'd like for them to make that decision sooner than later, so but I think for a few guys, that decision's up in the air right now.
You bring up the Bryce Young and Will Anderson thing, and I agree with you that might at least a little bit change people's opinions as they were both top 3 picks in the same draft. Go back to 2018 with what happened there and people sitting out. How different's the culture around that now, would you say?
So that I was saying one thing. I wanted to get to the second thing, which is directly to your point here, Ryan. The turning point of Georgia may have been the 19 Sugar Bowl in a way, and I don't think that's it's a hard argument to make, but listen to me real quickly as I try to attempt to make it. That game was for lack of a better term, all the bullshit was done. Like, there was no hanging around if you weren't playing. If you were playing, you were going hard. If you weren't playing, you weren't there. You weren't on the sideline. There was none of it. It was, we're done. We're not losing like that again. And they haven't. So, turning point's a strong word, but that was a significant moment at Georgia, was the 2019 Sugar Bowl. And I don't remember who I was in the car with. We drove down to New Orleans, and it might have been Dylan, or it was you, Matt. You and I were in the car, weren't we? Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Long car ride. I remember. Yeah,
it was a long car ride. It was not. It was fun.
Yeah.
But that, when JR didn't play, I think then, Ryan, what you saw was you had Trayvon Walker play, freshman, future #1 overall draft pick, played in that game. You've got, I can't remember who else was in there. Devontae Wyatt, that was his. Aziz played in the Texas game, right? And then Devon Wilson. So they have had guys the whole time. I think the thing about it is that they are so eager to win these games as a staff because you've got a month to get ready for them. I think that moment in time was really important. And now they've not lost a bowl game since, y'all. And I can't remember who checked out for the Peach Bowl. I have to go back and look. But, ever since then, they've been in the playoff. And I do wonder if it's recalibrated now, Matt. Ryan's question, I'll throw it to you in a second here. Ryan's question was, how different is the program now versus then? And the answer, Ryan, is I would say it's much more advanced than it was. It's more a mature program, both that Kirby's been there that extra few years, as well as just the thinking in there. I don't think the connection thing is fake, Matt. I think it's a real thing. I think you can really see that, feel that, all that stuff. And, I don't know if it makes sense for Smile to not play. This is just from my perspective. If you can benefit yourself by playing, then you should very seriously consider playing. I mean, because not playing, we know what you are, and that's it.
Yeah. And again, I go back to if I'm an NFL GM, I'd like to see a player who's willing to give it everything just to play, right? A guy who loves the game, doesn't want to sit out, like it eats at him inside. And I think with Brock Bowers, him sitting out against Georgia Tech and Ladd, was probably eating him up inside. You want a guy like that on your team that's willing to go out and fight. It's not work for him. It's fun in a way to go out and work hard and compete and be a better player. So I think you're probably right with Smile. I mean, all of those guys are in a position to still enhance their draft stock, Ryan. It's not like all these guys are surefire first rounders. And then Amarius Mims, too, who could be a top 15 pick. He sure looks like one physically. What does he do? I think Cedric Van Pran Granger will probably play as, one of the leaders on this team. He's not going in the first round as a center. But everyone's situation, is different. So it'll be interesting to see how it all goes down.
Hold on, Ryan. We've gotten off the subject, though, because of this trio's obsession with who's going to play and who's not. Florida State thinks it's a travesty they got left out of the college football playoff. Travesty, you're going to get to meet Travesty in a few weeks, and they're going to beat you 38-7. Wow. Aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Oh, okay.
I mean, all three of us all year long talked about how with Jordan Travis, and that's why the whole last few weeks has been extra frustrating with the narrative around Florida State. All year long, we watched them, and we said, I don't know if this is really a true contender there at the end.
Was it the Clemson game or the Boston College?
Which one was
game?
first?
Or the
Which one was
Miami
first?
game? Or the which game were you not impressed by? The Florida game? Or I'm kind of running out of time.
I was less impressed. I was more impressed with how bad LSU was than how good Florida State was that day.
Particularly on defense.
Yes. It started for me from the jump. And I feel like that was probably the case for other people. So that's my thing with Florida State. You rip away a pretty good college quarterback from that, and you're playing a team that is one of the best 4 teams in the country, yeah, I mean, I think you're going to get bounced.
I think Florida State's defense is really good.
They are good.
And so I think they could give Georgia some trouble. If they don't bring it, and you would think Kirby would have them ready, but if they get off to a slow start, like we've seen them get off to slow starts basically all season long, this could be a real fight for 2 or 3 quarters. But again, I think I've said this all year long. There's not a team, in my opinion, that's deeper and more talented. Maybe it's Alabama. Maybe I was wrong. But I don't think Florida State is nearly as deep and as talented and has the better coaching staff than Georgia. I'm not buying it. So Georgia.
What's so hard? I mean, first of all, I'll do credit and respect and everything to Alabama, and I'll just say this when you're on the field. When you look at Alabama, they look like Georgia. Nobody else looks like those two, y'all. I mean, TC.
You didn't get that when you watched Michigan, huh? 2 years ago?
You might get a little bit of that with Ohio State, though. I will say that on offense. But when you look at those guys at Bama on the offensive line, they look like the guys at Georgia. And exactly. I mean,
dude, when they walk out of the tunnel, it's different. I mean, you can tell when Alabama ran out of the tunnel, like they're the other guys that are like this. Like that's what it looks like when Georgia comes out.
What'd you say, Matt?
It's the size.
Every year, remember Evan Neal, 2 years ago? Just he's a mountain. I mean, he's a mountain. I saw him and Nolan Smith play at IMG together, and I'm like, there's no way this is a high school team. I mean, it's not a real one, but I mean,
and see, Florida, the Noles have guys like that in pockets.
They got the receivers and the back on offense, but are they going to play too? We don't know.
I don't know.
One of them's already declared. Coleman, I think.
So he's not going to play there, and that's their best guy.
He's a really good player. Listen, and like I know some Florida State people will watch this, and that's great, but like dismiss us at your own peril. This trio, we're not shaking pom poms around here. We call it like we see it, and I do think Florida State is in a position where they're going to be able to run that league for a while. Who's going to get in their way? I mean, very quickly, who's going to get in their way? Miami? I mean, really? Miami could.
You would think it would have happened already a little bit with Miami.
Louisville might first. They're bringing in some talent.
They
I'm
are.
Not Clemson hype, but Louisville's slowly, I think, a better program than people think.
Usually when Louisville's good, that's the case because people forget about Louisville and they don't think about them. But, would Florida State have beaten Ole Miss? Would Florida State have beaten Missouri? Florida State would have beaten Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think they would have beaten Missouri.
I don't think they would have beaten.
I don't think they would have beaten Missouri.
I don't think they would have beaten Missouri. I don't think they might have matched up better with Ole Miss maybe than we realize. I'm not sure, but I wanted to.
Problems.
One more time, Matt.
Part of it is the matchup thing too that no one wants to talk about ever.
There's that part. Which how long ago did I warn you, Ryan? I was like, Alabama, that might not be the
yes, exactly.
Greatest matchup for Georgia
on earth. It wasn't a great matchup for Georgia, and part of that is because they mirror them in a lot of ways.
I think that's one. I think if Texas plays well, they're going to win the national championship, but they got to play well, and because I think that they match up with Bama in a way that other folks sort of can't. And I think that Texas would have been a real problem for Georgia, too, for the record. I think Michigan, I'm just so torn on the thing. We're going to have more time to talk about it. But anyway, I don't know about what Colin said. It's aggressive. But, I mean, I will say there has been so much, media talk about, and so much is maybe a strong word, but there's been this narrative, because it's easy to say, that they got screwed. Now, I don't think they did. They're just not one of the best 4 teams. But anyway, we'll see you on the next video.